You put the goalpost as meetings booked, you're going to get a shit ton of meetings, and those meetings are not going to be good. The only reason we have so many industries, legal, cybersecurity, I can go on and on, is because people suck.
We are trying to take down Marketo, Salesforce, HubSpot. What's the ambition?
The ambition for us is to build the next Salesforce.
These are some hot takes. Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs, CEO of Pavilion here, and I'm really excited to welcome you to a new monthly podcast that I'm producing in conjunction with Otter AI. It's called Revenue Blindspots, and every month we're going to explore the pivotal moments in the careers of top revenue leaders. Our focus is to dive deep into the blind spots that have shaped leadership strategy and growth, uncovering lessons that can help the next generation of revenue executives. And every month we're going to bring on a new executive, and we are kicking off the entire show with a woman that's become a friend of mine. She's a powerhouse, a former venture capitalist, and now the co-founder and CRO of Tofu. I'm talking about Elaine Zelby. And Elaine runs Tofu with her partner, with her co-founder. It's a generative AI platform that helps scale and automate go-to-market for B2B marketing teams. It's essentially an AI co-pilot for B2B marketing. Prior to Tofu, she was a partner at Signalfire, an early stage VC where she invested at the intersection of AI and SaaS. And before investing, she built and led marketing teams at early and growth stage startups like Slack and Consensus. Elaine has two small humans and spends as much time as she can outdoors, trail running, cycling, hiking, or doing other active endeavors. We love active people here on Revenue Blindspots. Elaine, welcome to our first ever show.
I am very happy to be the very first guest. I feel honored. Thank you, Sam.
You should feel honored. We are so excited to have you. So I gave a little bit of the background on Tofu, but it's not really fair to bring on a co-founder of a fast-growing business and not give them an opportunity to tell us what that business does, because somebody out there is listening and needs Tofu as a solution. So in your words, what does Tofu do? What does the company do?
When I was on the VC side, I saw two things converging at the same time. The first one was I kept talking to revenue leaders, CMOs, CROs, and everyone was telling me the same story. Too many tools. We are tooled out. I want less tools. It was very clear to me we were entering a new bundling phase. We had gone through 10 years plus of this proliferation of SaaS, the unbundling. So I was like, okay, there's going to be a bundling of go-to-market tooling. The second wave I saw kind of hitting at the same time was I actually built my first generative AI product in 2018 called SoundSpot that could turn any blog into a podcast. And I started getting pitched in 2022 around all these kind of wrappers around OpenAI, specifically for marketing and sales. And I was like, this has now gotten good enough. And AI is really good at a few things. This was in 2022. It's good at content creation. It's good at synthesis. It's good at research. A lot of the things that are the building blocks for go-to-market teams. So put our heads together, me and my co-founders, and we're like, what is the big swing here? The big swing is to rebundle the MarTech stack, reduce all of this bloat, make it so it's a single platform where revenue teams can do all of their workflows, create all of their content, execute, and then measure. So we are trying to be the unified platform for today marketing teams to create, execute, and measure campaigns across channels. That can take the form of anything from one-to-one ABM campaigns, which can truly scale now, to lifecycle campaigns such as nurture that's personalized by persona or industry, upsell, cross-sell campaigns, prospecting campaigns, webinar campaigns, truly trying to be both omni-channel, but also touch all the different aspects of a marketing org.
I mean, this is really exciting. So first, I just want to double click on one thing. By the way, isn't it funny, like in 100 years, people were like, what did you mean when you said double click? But anyway.
It's true. That's so true.
When you say ABM can truly scale now, I'm really interested in what does that mean? Tell us, and I would love to unpack a little bit about the workflow that underpins that statement, because I'm sure it's quite exciting.
So there's two pieces of this, and I'm glad you asked this question. There's the workflow piece, but there's the mindset shift piece. And that is actually even more fascinating to me, because here's the thing. I talk to, call it 5 to 10 revenue leaders a day. And everyone's like, we're starting an ABM program, or we're kicking off our ABM program, or we're scaling our ABM program. But when they get into the nitty gritty, there's still this mentality of we can do a couple key accounts one-to-one, we do a bunch of them one-to-few, and then we have some of our one-to-many buckets. And to me, it's kind of a misnomer if we're using the term account-based marketing. that literally should be at the account level. I just never understood the whole concept of one to few and one to many. For Tofu, our product, but also just what generative AI can do today, we can take the same amount of effort that it would take to do one account at one to one and scale that to 1,000 accounts one to one. So there truly is this, you have to get out of this headspace of we can only do it for our top 3 prospects. You can now do it at scale. And the second thing when it comes to the workflow part is it's really about understanding the who. I would say this is the biggest barrier people come in is like, who is your target audience? Is it people that are cold prospects? Have they engaged with you in some way? What is the entire purpose of your ABM machine, ABM program? The second is, how do you make this repeatable and scalable? Part of that is understanding what are the channels that your audience lives on. So what are the different places you want to be in front of them? ABM does not just mean display ads. That is one small aspect of it. It also means landing pages, email experiences, decks, one-pagers, thought leadership content. It really should span the entire channel mix. But the first thing is, who are we targeting and why? The second thing is, where do they live in the physical and digital world? Then the third thing is, let's create comprehensive content touching all of those places and make it truly one-to-one. One of the other pieces that comes into play that AI is exceptionally good at is the research piece. So it's not just enough to say, we have some information in our CRM. We want to go now and crawl the entire internet to understand what are all the nuances of this account that we might care about. How do we go and then turn that into pain points they're facing, value propositions we should use, full on messaging. And then the next piece of that is turning it into the content. All this is automated, but those are just the sequential steps that have to happen in executing a scaled program.
So correct me if I'm mistaken or misunderstanding, but maybe there's a world where Tofu knows the 1,000 accounts that I want to get into and automatically creates 1,000 different landing pages that are customized to that company, maybe that are even bringing in pain points that are relevant to that company, maybe scraped from like a 10K or 10Q or some kind of publicly available information. So like with the click of a button, Xerox can get a landing page that's totally specific to Pavilion. HP can get a landing page that's again, all of these companies, all these prospects I'm selling to them, but I understand their pain points and therefore I'm presenting that information back to them in a way that feels completely personalized and contextual. That's possible now?
It is. And not only that, it's crawling the 10Ks, 10Qs, crawling their websites, crawling the internet, crawling their press releases. It's also pulling in historical context you have in your CRM. So it's this pairing of the public and private data with your own core messaging and the combination of all that together that can really craft that powerful one-to-one messaging. And to your question of, is it possible? 100%. And that's the piece where it's almost a bigger hurdle to get over the mind shift piece as opposed to the workflow shift piece.
Amazing. So one more question, then we'll dive into the topic at hand, which is blind spots and really career evolution, company evolution, and how you overcame it. But there's a whole conversation about kind of platform companies. You talked about bundling versus unbundling, and there's one world almost exactly to the point. There's the Parker Conrad Rippling style approach, which is we're going to build a platform from the very beginning. From the very beginning of this company's inception, we believe that the world is bundling and we want it to bundle towards us. And then there's another world, which has sort of been conventional wisdom for the last 10, 15 years, which is, you do have to start with a point solution because you want to get really, really good at delivering exceptional experiences. And that point solution should be the tip of the spear or the tip of the wedge that you can then use to expand into other use cases. But you kind of take it one step at a time. Are you all, is Tofu firmly in the camp of we're trying to build a product as quickly as possible? We are trying to take down, I don't know, Marketo, Salesforce, HubSpot. What's the ambition?
We took the rippling approach. We did the platform from day one, and it was a very conscious decision that followed exactly the logic you laid out. It's so much easier to build a wedge point solution and then know where you want to expand from there. Much harder to take the platform approach from day one, especially when we're targeting enterprises. For us, we work with public companies all the way down to growth stage companies. But when you're building for public or large enterprise, there's a lot of nuance that comes with the requirements to serve those customers, especially given the nature of how many people they might have on their marketing team. One of our larger customers has over 120 users, cover all different types of marketing functionality. Now, the ambition for us is to build the next Salesforce for marketing. So build a company that is truly trying to bundle all of that stuff together. I would say even if you look at Marketo, I'll take as an example that's different from HubSpot. Marketo is marketing automation. They send emails. That is the functionality that Marketo serves for people. HubSpot has actually slowly, they started as that for
Yeah.
SMB, and they have now, huge ass, like, I love HubSpot. I just think we use it. I just think it's a fantastic company, but I would like to follow in the path of them. Like, they've now gone and built the CRM. They've built a bunch, they have the landing pages. They do all kinds of functionality. I think they now serve ads. That is a different approach because they have bolted it on, but one that we aspire to replicate.
I mean, the degree of difficulty there feels higher, but also if you can do it, especially at the enterprise level, then that itself is a moat, right? Your ability to build product quickly and penetrate organizations, particularly now. I'm wondering if you're seeing this because you've got so many great logos already. That what I'm hearing from CROs is procurement processes have slowed down, not just because of economic volatility, but because everybody's got new legal language and new, red lines around what you're doing with my data if you're using AI in your product and if you're using it to train your models. Are you seeing something similar?
Yeah, and it's a little bit of the Wild West in that nobody knows what they should be asking for. And sometimes I feel like I have to play lawyer as a side project because sometimes we'll get, and this is actually interesting, the size and scale of a company is not indicative of how many red lines we get back, which is weird to me. I would expect it to at least follow in some kind of linear path. So we'll get language that lawyers will try to throw in there that if they understood at all how this stuff actually works, there's no way we can possibly agree to it. And then sometimes people clearly get it and they're baking in language that has some understanding of how these underlying models work and are trying to protect both sides. And I think that's the right approach. I'm excited to hopefully have some more standardized language.
Yeah.
There's the DPA concept, which I think most people are trying to move towards, although we get asked for that very infrequently, which is interesting. But I will say, feels like people are trying to protect themselves in ways that they don't understand yet. And it's annoying. There are two parts of my job that I don't love. One is invoices, chasing down invoices, man. I did not know how long I would spend doing that. The second thing, and everyone's on a different cadence and different payment schedule and everything. The second thing is all the legal stuff. Just the amount of little, like, do we really need to change that one word? Is that really that important? Apparently it is.
it's it is not fun, and you realize that like the reason these contracts are like this is because one time this thing happened to one company, and therefore it became part of the dogma.
So I always use this phrase. I'm like, the only reason we have so many industries, legal, cybersecurity, I can go on and on, is because people suck. That is the only reason the
Exactly.
entire industry exists. If people didn't suck, we would not need all this. We would not need security. We would not need lawyers.
I agree with you 100%. All right, so actually one last thing so that we can contextualize tofu, and then I want to dive into this blind spot. But uh, where are you in your journey? So, nothing confidential, but I do believe that you just announced a Series A or recently. So let's celebrate that. How much money have you raised? Who are your investors? Where are you on your growth trajectory?
Well, thank you for that. We did. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary of incorporation. So we're 2 years old as a company. We've been in market selling for about a year and a quarter. We'll call it that. We raised a Series A. We raised a $5 million seed a year ago, and then we just closed a Series A $12 million Series A. Have amazing investors and partners. We have Index Ventures, Signal Fire, HubSpot Ventures, Stage 2, Liquid 2, Correlation, a bunch of other great names there. So we feel very lucky to have some awesome partners.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Okay, so let's dive into the subject at hand. This is the prompt. You are an AI yourself, Elaine. So the prompt I'm typing is: think of a time in your career when you had a significant blind spot in your approach to revenue leadership, go-to-market strategy, or operational execution. Those three things mean basically anything. What was the blind spot? Let's talk about it.
Oh man, I have so many of these. So I'll start with the first one, which I think is the most important, and we can dig into a few others. The first one is incentives matter more than anything else. And that's a broad statement, but I can get very particular about this. I'll
Please.
give you many examples. First example, when I first joined an early stage startup out of college, I was a biomechanical engineer. I was so far not on the track of going into go to market or revenue at all. I just started figuring things out. Companies selling to 55-year-old CIOs, like that was our target audience. I started building out the SDR team. No idea what I was doing. I learned so quickly how wherever you put the goalpost in terms of compensation, that is the results you will get. You put the goalpost as meetings booked, you're going to get a shit ton of meetings, and those meetings are not going to be good, right? If you start to play with how you create incentives, where you draw the line for how people achieve those incentives, you will 100% shift behavior. And I think what that means is, as a revenue leader, you have to think 2 steps ahead. And you have to think through the butterfly effect of it. What is the implications of this? Okay, what is the implications of that? That's where you need to think. It's not just 1 step ahead, it's actually 2. And I think if you can do that and then work backwards, that is how you can align incentives well. But I learned this early in my career, is that incentive alignment is the most important thing you can do with your team, with your prospects, with your existing customers, with your investors, with your co-founders. It is truly all about understanding what is driving this person. And it's at the person level, right? What is driving this individual person? And how can I make it such that my incentives of what I am personally driven by is also aligned with theirs? And I think that once you understand this as a blind spot and have it as a constant mirror, you start to change the way that you do everything, from how you build a team, how you compensate the team, how you forecast, how you deal with the handoff between different people. This is another piece too, also comes back to incentives. Handoffs happen probably 5 times in a B2B go-to-market world. You have a prospect who is being touched by marketing in all kinds of ways. You typically are going to have some kind of SDR function, BDR function, qualification function. You then have a handoff to sales. You then have a handoff to customer success, which might be like more of an onboarding or implementation. And then you have an account manager. That is a lot of different people who are all involved in the revenue function. Now, understanding how the pieces tie together and how you actually make them work as a team and not against each other is how you have a much easier time generating more revenue, predicting that revenue, and just creating a much more peaceable org in general. So I would say that is my number one thing, is just always remembering incentives matter more than anything else.
Did anything emerge in terms of like principles? Obviously, the butterfly effect, that's an important one. But when you think about incentivizing go-to-market organizations or sales teams, are there other principles to keep in mind, like simplicity? Like, one thing that comes to mind for me is, just to your point, incentives drive behavior, and also outliers and we have to understand that we have to solve for the mean. I don't know if you agree with this. I would love your reaction. But we have to solve for the mean, not for the outlier, in the sense that, oh, this person broke the comp plan or this person did this thing. But we have to look at the aggregate behavior and understand we're never going to perfect it. And in my experience, simplicity is still a more powerful lever than trying to incorporate every possible iteration and incentive to driving a specific outcome. But I don't know if anything emerged from that over your time leading and running revenue teams.
I think people overcomplicate stuff all the time. Simplicity, absolutely. Also, even from a like right now, real situation, we're scaling up our team quite a bit. And I am a firm believer that all marketing, sales, and CS should be comped variably. It's boggled my mind how we've comped sales variably forever, but marketing and CS typically is just base salary. They are still driving revenue. They're still very much touching customers and should be compensated accordingly, in my opinion. So everyone at Tofu that is on that side of the house is comped variably. Now, where you put those stakes matter a lot, but you can overcomplicate it to the nth degree. For example, if we wanted to comp our SDR team on second meeting, which is what we're doing. First meeting, cool, it might not be that qualified. If they get to a second meeting, we know that it's actually qualified. Now, marketing is going to also be in the mix too and touching those leads. Like, how are we going to parse out who was responsible for what? I'm not overcomplicating it. It's quite simple. And so for me, it's like, if you had a hand in this that is visible, that we can track, we are going to track and attribute. We're not going to go back and retroactively do all this kind of stuff. Like, that also is not the right incentive. Meaning, if you want to get comped on that, make sure you have a way to attribute it. So that is putting in all the right tracking parameters, making sure you're updating the CRM if it's not getting updated. So I agree in simplicity generally. I also agree in trying to be as comprehensive as possible, if that makes sense. Meaning, I want to make sure that we're trying to analyze the big picture, break it down into bite-sized things that are attainable but also measurable, and then figure out how do we create a system that I don't have to keep tweaking every month. That's the other thing that I also see revenue leaders do all the time is they're constantly tweaking their system. Everyone's constantly redoing their lead scoring, redoing their attribution models, redoing their whatever the benchmark for compensation is. And I think that's another huge trap that people fall in, is constantly thinking they need to optimize it, when to your point, oftentimes doing something that's simple but feels fair is the best point of action.
I mean, these are some hot takes, actually. So
I got
marketing can
lots.
be. I love it. I love it. That's why you're a great podcast guest. So marketing should be comped variably, and to the point you said, if I'm hearing you correctly, hey, it's not first touch, last touch. It's any touch attribution we're looking at. Like if you touched it, we're going to attribute that revenue to your goal, your
Mhm.
whatever your KPI is. Does that, uh, do you worry that you're double counting, over counting, that you don't have clear signal? If you're thinking about, and this, by the way, this is for every company, but especially true for Pavilion, right? We're highly word of mouth driven. At the same time, we run ads and we run different kinds of demand gen campaigns and we go to trade shows. And the reality, which is the reality of all like attribution conversation, is that everybody's quote unquote touched multiple times in multiple different ways. And that's how humans make these decisions and make their determinations. So the consequence of that potentially could be like either over indexing on a specific channel of growth and saying like, hey, this was really performant because any touch, and therefore we want to spend $100 more or $1 million more on that channel. Do you worry about that attribution question or not really?
Not really. And the way I think about attribution in general is I work backwards. So I work backwards from what are the goals that I'm trying to achieve. So let's say it's a revenue goal. I can say, okay, here's our ACV. Here's our revenue goal. That means we need X number of customers to hit the revenue goal. Okay, let me go and look backwards in the funnel. So for us, we have 6 stages of our funnel. And the two that matter the most is what I call like the evaluating stage. So that's post second meeting where it's like a true opportunity. And then the one right before it where it's that like second meeting. So those are the two where it's like we're creating real opportunities. I also can see the fall off from demos created through all of these different stages. So I know what we need to hit to do that. Now, I don't care if I'm giving multiple people the same, compensation incentives, as long as I know that, hey, for every person that we're hiring, here's how much revenue we're going to generate, because that's the company goals, and we're hitting them. I would rather have a team that feels supported, that feels like they have the freedom to go and do a bunch of stuff. Now, you brought up one other piece, which I think is also important, is you could be running all kinds of campaigns, which means you're touching everyone. Now, are all those a good use of time and money? Probably not. So is there a way to also create the incentives where you're actually measuring those pieces too and making sure that people are also aligned on that? So from a marketing perspective, maybe it's not 100% on just like, did you have any touch point whatsoever? It's actually also figuring out, okay, what was the cost per demo, and are we making sure that we're keeping it under a certain amount? Now, what that might mean is, hey, we're actually doing ads, and ads can touch everybody, but our ads are really expensive. So we're not getting below that mark for cost per demo. Now I have to go and reconfigure my channel mix a little bit. And so I think that there's ways to do it, which also hopefully don't feel overcomplicated. But I'd rather have people feel like they're not having sharp elbows against their team
Yeah.
or constantly fighting for a lead. I just don't like that dynamic.
No, I tend to agree with you. You have to be careful about like efficiency, meaning spend, but generally speaking, like I'd rather over attribute in a way so that people are high fiving and thinking that they're working on things together. Because and anyway, the point is like, an SDR sends an email after your prospect has seen a few ads, heard you on a podcast, met you at a trade show. So is that SDR attribution? Is that trade show attribution? It's really hard to tell. It's better to just be somewhat generous as long as you can afford to be generous.
Here's my other, well, yes, I have another hot take, but also a comment on that. It's not even that afford to be generous, it's put the benchmarks at a place where it actually financially makes sense. So you always can be generous. I think that's also the other thing, meaning let's make sure that everyone is still aligned with the company revenue goals and that it puts you in a position where you're actually able to do that. That's another thing I've seen people make the mistake of, is that they put the bar too low where it feels like it's a pie, you have to allocate the pie, as opposed to the pie is a little bit bigger.
Right.
And again, you're kind of pushing people in that direction. Other hot take. Oh wait, where'd it go? I'll think of it. I had another hot take for you.
I'm sure you
I'll think
do.
of it. I'll think of it in a second.
I can set up some softballs for you. Oh, to the person with the tote bag left.
Yes, better lighting. Here we go.
Is that a relative of yours, or you're in like a co-working space?
Oh, I'll give you my crazy story. So I am in Florida right now, which is not a place I love, but it is my older child's spring break, and I needed childcare, and my mom is down here. So she told me if I showed up in Florida that she would help watch my daughter. So yesterday, this is Sunday, we get up at 6 in the morning from California. We fly to Dallas. That part was fine. Have 2 hour layover in Dallas. Get on our second plane. We're on the runway, and they make an announcement that the flight is canceled. We go
Oh,
back to the airport, have an 8 hour layover, get in here at it finally left.
how
That
old are
flight
your
kept getting
children in
delayed.
this scenario?
3 years old.
Oh my God. Is your
I just
husband
took
with
one.
you?
No, it was just me and my older one. My husband's at home with the baby. Uh, we get into Florida at 2 in the morning, so I am now in Florida in
You
a common
are,
room.
well, there we go. You're a rock star. I'm sorry. I really
No
am
worries.
sorry. That's
Oh wait, I have my hot take again.
okay.
Okay,
Bring it.
so
Let's go.
here's my other hot take. Um, it's less of a hot take. It's more of like a as we became more data driven as go to market people, it actually complicates attribution more. The more data we have, the more complicated it gets. And this is something where I don't even know how to unwind it. But I am finding that everyone wants more data, figuring out how better to attribute a dollar or to attribute, touches to various people. But the more data, the harder it becomes. And I actually think it's doing a disservice to people trying to figure this out and correctly attribute stuff. On top of that, there's dark everything. People talk about dark social. There's dark word of mouth, to your point. I'm sure 50 plus percent, maybe 80 plus percent of all your stuff is word of mouth. Like that's so hard to figure out. I'm sure they saw, maybe they listened to your podcast, maybe they follow you on LinkedIn. They've probably never interacted with your stuff before, but that's where they heard about it. There's dark web, web searches. So I think that there's also so much dark data where now we collect all this data for data's sake. There's so much stuff that we actually have no data to fully put our hands around. And now we're trying to make sense of that. And I don't know if it makes sense to do that. I think sometimes you have to a little bit go with gut and intuition paired with the data that makes sense.
I mean, I think that that's where it all comes out. Like my experience in marketing specifically, because I find sales just so much more discrete and binary. It's so much more understandable. And marketing is really getting inside the human mind and figuring out like how do people make decisions and why. And my experience is that they make decisions for a lot of different reasons, and you have you can't circumvent logic and like common sense. Like you come to a website and people are going to want to know more about your product, and if you don't share that information and you just put up a lead form, it's not going to convert very well, and there's no science behind that. It's like, well, who would want to buy something that they don't know anything about? So my point is long-winded, which is I agree with you that there has to be a healthy amount of intuition and empathy, because everything cannot be distilled down to like a small number, especially when it comes to attribution, especially when it comes to, well, what was the last thing that happened that made you finally make the decision to buy tofu? And it's like, well, it's a preponderance of a million things over the course of the last 6 to 9 months. So at any rate,
100% agree.
last question before we get some influences, we get some books that you want us to read. You mentioned that you listen to podcasts. Did you say at 3 times speed?
Yes. Hence why I also talk super fast. I'm trying to do my best to slow it down.
You literally listen at 3x speed?
I literally listen at 3x speed.
You're insane. Okay, so
That
before
is
we
true
get
also.
there, before we get there, one last question, operational. Biggest surprise, you were in product and marketing actually before you went to Signal Fire. You were then a VC for a while. Now you're back as an operator. What's the biggest surprise? Like, what's the biggest thing that caught you off guard back in the operator seat?
I like this question.
Like, what did you not have a full enough appreciation for as a VC?
The thing that I did not have, we'll also say not just operator, but founder. I think there's a difference between just being an operator and being an actual founder of a company. There's so many little things that it takes to run a company that nobody sees. I mean, I was mentioning before, like invoices, dealing with invoices. is so much time and effort that I never expected to have to do. Literally, it's not even just creating them, it's that every single one of our customers is on a different cadence and a different schedule. And, people want to get paid here or there, credit card or bill.com or whatever. That part, or like HR, the little things, like I have to deal with our office space. Those things, it's just things like that are required to run a company. And so I think that I did not have enough appreciation for that kind of stuff. Um, the one thing that I'm really excited about that I would say not necessarily caught me off guard because I wrote about this in my newsletter 4 years ago, but I am now seeing this be the true year where B2B influencer marketing takes off, which I knew was coming. It just kind of, I wasn't sure when. And I feel like I saw the signal last year, like that ship is sailing. So that one is kind of like a fun one. And I'm excited to also take advantage of that.
Well, and this podcast is sponsored by Otter, so you are
There you
actually
go.
participating in B2B influencer
This is true.
marketing.
Happy to be service, Otter.
Indeed, it's very meta. All right, before we go, a couple things to learn a little bit about you and just to pay it forward. What are the ideas? It could be a mentor, it could be a famous CEO, it could be a book you've read, a podcast, a movie, but there are ideas, there are memes that are matriculating and floating through the atmosphere that have planted a seed in your mind that we should know about. So when I phrase it in that way, which is a little bit, I don't know, whatever, what comes to mind? Like, what are some ideas that are interesting to you? What are some books that you think we should read? Give us some ideas.
Well, I talked about the whole butterfly effect thing before. One of my favorite books that I actually read twice just because it was that fascinating is a book, How We Got to Now. And they go through 7 massive butterfly effects, starting with the invention, the discovery of glass, and all of the different things that led to, the creation of ice, and all of the new industries that unlocked. It's just for people that like that kind of stuff, it pairs history with a way of thinking to really wrap your head around what are the implications. To me, it's always about what are the implications of things that are happening now, 3 clicks down the road. So I really like that one. That was a more recent one that I just thought was amazing. I listen to a ton of podcasts, and for me, it's just a way of consuming a ton of information and trying to balance that information out across all my different social diet. One hack I have for people is if you ever wanted to read a book that's a mostly nonfiction book, but every time the authors are publishing their book, they go on a little podcast tour. If you don't want to read the whole thing, you can literally just go and listen to them on a podcast and you're going to get all of the meat in 30 minutes. Yeah, but they're going to give you the best. Like they're going to give you the top 10 things from that. That's one of my life hacks. And
All
then
right. So what's your favorite podcast you're listening to right now, or what's a great podcast?
a great one that's underappreciated is called Throughline. It's in the NPR family, but their entire thing is going back in time to understand the present. And they go really deep in one story that's very topical right now. It could be cultural, it could be political, it could be something like that, but it's extremely topical today. But they go and explain through time how we got there and give you a lot of the historical context, which I think is very cool. That one is great. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones. Oh, another one for marketing folks, sales and marketing folks, Under the Influence. It's a Canadian podcast and it's all about brand marketing. And it is amazing. They go through all kinds of stuff from like the history of jingles and why jingles stick in our head to one of the more recent ones that was so fun is this type of brand marketing where you actually go, they called it hugging the cactus. So it's all the haters, whenever you get a lot of haters, like how do you actually go and like embrace them so much that it wins you brand affinity? This is a fantastic podcast.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, good. So Under the Influence, we've also got Throughline, and then the Stephen Johnson book, which is How We Got to Now, one of the great sort of like popular writers. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? If they want to purchase Tofu, they want to ask you a question about what you said, how do you prefer to be contacted?
I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so feel free to find me on LinkedIn, Elaine Zelby, also Elaine at tofuhq.com. I love engaging with people. Honestly, I love learning from other folks. For me, one of my major personality faults is I have trouble saying no to anything. So when people want to talk
And
or if
being on
people
the
give me
podcast.
this, I would have done anyways, but I really truly am an extrovert, but I love understanding people and understanding what is top of mind for them and using that information to help us build product. Like for us, everything comes down to I want to build something that is actually providing true utility to a lot of people. And the only way we're going to do that is to really get in the minds and get in the day-to-day of what it looks like to be them in their work and how do we help. And so I love talking to people.
That's awesome. Elaine, thank you for being the guinea pig and the first ever guest on Revenue Blind Spots. I appreciate it. Otter AI appreciates it. And congrats on building a great company with Tofu.
Thank you for having me. Excited to also continue to be a big part of Pavilion. You guys
Let's
are
go.
amazing. Thanks, Sam.